Heyo YouTube, it's Flowcat, and today I just wanted to make a discussion video about something that I've been thinking about for like years at this point. And that has to do with necessary evils in video games. Specifically, we're talking about RNG because I play Genshin Impact and that game is heavily dictated by RNG. But specifically, this is a conversation that I've seen discussed broadly in gaming where people who are older gamers remember the good old days. The days of, like, specifically in my case, I used to play RuneScape, old school MMOs, you know, things people probably don't even know existed, like Trickster and Cabal. And they were extremely grindy, time-investing games. And it wasn't that they were necessarily super challenging, it's just that there was, well, Josh Strife Hayes made a fantastic video about how these games created a system of adversity where the game itself was sort of a mystery to be unraveled, sort of something you had to unfold for yourself with very little outside help. And this led to needing to communicate more within the game with other players to figure things out, you know, genuinely helping other players through their experience in the game because they couldn't just Google it or whatever. And also it created a sense of fulfillment when you progressed far into these games and you did that based on your own merits, not based on like following a quest marker. Games have become so optimized that they are extremely handholdy, and oftentimes nowadays you'll pick up a game, you'll play all the way through it, and then you're done and that's it. And that can be good for gamers that are more casual and just want to pick up a game and enjoy it for a couple hours, put it down for a couple weeks and then come back to it, like how people might enjoy Mario Kart or something. But those kinds of games are meant to be short-lived and they're meant to captivate your attention for a short time. They're built around the whole foundation of fun, you know, spontaneous novelty, discovery, and like a dopamine rush, basically. Like you play the game, you have fun. But if you're playing a game for a long period of time, like if you're playing an MMORPG, that novelty wears off. That shininess wears off. It doesn't matter how fun the game is, eventually doing the same thing over and over is going to become routine. It'll wear off that luster of joy that you know, it won't spark joy anymore and you'll throw it away just like you do with other things, right? The thing is that there are gamers that remember the time before when we used to get this fulfillment. And so this is where I want to get into my personal experience. As a longtime gamer, I actually struggled with this myself. I used to play a lot of old school MMOs and I remember my heyday of having so much fun in these experiences back when I was younger, you know. It really felt like when I would grind a level in these MMOs, like I was really doing something, you know, because it took so much effort to overcome these like EXP barriers and stuff like that. But you could just by grinding, you know what I mean? You could, it just like that was the adversity. Anyway, as I got older, I started to feel like games weren't captivating me the same way anymore. I started to feel like I wasn't getting a lot of satisfaction from these games. Like, you know, I could sit down and have fun for an hour, but what's the point of that? Because once the dopamine's gone, or once the fun is gone, once the fun is over, it's gone, right? And when you play games every day, you kind of want something that carries with you a little more. Like when you complete a fantastic story and you remember it really well. Adversity is what created this satisfaction. And I didn't really feel this again for a long time until I played Genshin Impact. Now, Genshin Impact is my first gacha game. I was not a gacha gamer before Genshin Impact. I was very suspicious of the monetization system, and I was very careful in approach of the game. I honestly didn't even expect to like it when I downloaded it. I just kind of downloaded it like the same way. Like back in the day, I would download 5 MMOs in one day and half of them wouldn't even load. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of situation we were dealing with back in the day. So downloading a game just to try it out is no big deal, right? Anyway, I fell in love with the game. And one of the things that I fell in love with is the fact that RNG kind of sucks. I kind of fell in love with the adversity of the wishing system. We all have our opinions, okay? And I think people should spend their money responsibly. I think that you shouldn't gamble your money away, and I am by no means addicted to the gacha system in Genshin. I don't have any desire to just like do it, like other than the fact that I love the game, and so I like work with the system to essentially overcome it. And this is where you can see where I'm going, is that the wishing system, although it sucks, you know, I mean, oh, I can't get this character, I don't have enough primo gems, stuff like that. When you learn how to work with the system, it creates that feeling of overcoming an obstacle that really is adversity. It really is an obstacle. It's a true barrier to stopping you from getting the units that you want. But as a longtime Genshin enjoyer, I can confidently say, and this is a really good time to make this video because Kazuha just came out. I have a lot of people in my community that have been saving for Kazuha for months, and they got more than they even expected. You know what I mean? Like they overcame the obstacle and some. They waited, they saved, they did it, and like, yes, no one likes the waiting part, but everyone loves the day the unit comes and they've been waiting and saving and they can just snag that unit right off the banner. It feels good, and it feels like you've overcome a system that is working against you, because it is working against you. Now, I think Genshin actually has a fantastic free-to-play experience. Maybe fantastic's a little too dramatic. You know, it's good enough. Like, it's a pretty good experience for free-to-plays. We have learned over the course of time exactly how many primo gems we get per patch. It's very consistent. And this is actually a good thing because free-to-play players can budget out how many wishes they're going to get per patch. They can save, they can do all that kind of stuff. And because Genshin has avoided power creep, once you get the units that you want and you're able to build good teams, you don't have the same pressure. Like I haven't played other like older gacha games, but the idea of power creep is that you force whales to keep spending, keep pulling the new units because they're just stronger, they're just better. And that excites people, you know, they love that. They, ooh, bigger numbers, yeah. And so that happens, but over the course of time, the older units fall behind, and you know the whales don't really care because they can afford the new units. But free-to-play players, that's when the balance tips too far into the adversity side. So basically what I'm getting at is that there has to be a balance. There has to be enough adversity that you feel the challenge of working with the system. Like I've been playing Lost Ark recently, and that system would be like honing or the collectibles or things like that, where it's a challenge to overcome those systems. But when you do, or when you get lucky, either way, you know, you feel satisfied about having overcome such an adverse situation. Some people may not like approaching games in this way, and I can totally understand that. You know, for someone who's maybe extremely casual and they just want to play Mario Kart or Animal Crossing or whatever casual game they enjoy, Sims, you know, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't need to enjoy this kind of gameplay, but I think that there are a large amount of gamers like me and other older gamers, like older MMO gamers, who kind of grew up. It makes me like back in my day, it's like I'm like sitting here like back in my day, we had to walk up foot through 10 feet of snow naked both ways. You know what I mean? Like it's that kind of feeling where like, I don't get that anymore. When Skyrim came out, I was so disappointed in how handholdy the game is. It just kind of like rolls right through, and there's really very little challenge to the game at all. The choices that you make don't really matter that much compared to like an older game like Morrowind, where, you know, you could make the wrong decision and your character just dies. Like you're talking to someone and they offer you some mysterious substance and you eat it and you jump 300 feet in the air and you fall down to your death. And it's like, I did that, but overcoming that feels good in a way, because because you don't have the guarantee that you're going to get through it. This is where I want to get into like really discussing why optimized games have become so boring. It's that it's not fun to play a game where you are simply piloting through the experience. Like there are a ton of games like Skyrim and other games nowadays where you don't really have to do much of anything. It's very laid out for you, and there are games that are even worse than this. Like there are some developers, Ubisoft, who have really hammered into this, it's gotten to the point where you don't even have to play the game. You just go from like point to point to point. You just click the buttons. You just follow the motions, right? And I don't think that's fun for anybody. No matter how gimmicky, no matter how flashy, no matter how whatever it seems, like, I don't think that gamers enjoy that kind of experience. I think a lot of us want a challenge. We want to be challenged mentally. We want to be able to use our smarts, our strategy to overcome some kind of obstacle. And this is the beauty of it, is that by talking about this, we can encourage better development of these systems. You know, I think that this conversation gets very hostile. And I think that we kind of split into two camps where it's like RNG good, RNG bad, or like adversity good, adversity bad. You know, like we just kind of like split off into these fighting camps. But realistically, if we discuss this stuff more openly and with less hostility, then we can come to conclusions that will allow us to influence the development of future games. If, for instance, we discuss how like some people enjoy the gacha systems and how like it creates scarcity for certain units that aren't popular, for instance, or it creates like a certain kind of value to your unit. Genshin is fundamentally a party building game. And so if you could just acquire every single unit and then you could make every single team and everyone could do that, it wouldn't really feel like there's any value, like you didn't overcome anything to do that. But when you build a full team in Genshin Impact, you have to acquire and build and optimize every single one of those units individually. And that is not an easy task. And that's something that you have to plan and prepare for. And you don't have, like, you have to deal with resource management in Genshin, where you can't just max out every unit. You have to pick the units that you enjoy and focus on them and put your resources into them. And doing so feels good. When you've put a team together and you've managed your resources and you've achieved what you wanted to achieve, it feels good, because there was no guarantee that you were going to be able to do that in the first place. Of course, we're talking about balance here, and this can go too far in the wrong way. Talking specifically about like Diablo Immortal situations where obviously the free-to-play experience in that game sucks. It's terrible. And it doesn't matter, like it doesn't matter how much you struggle against the obstacle of the game. If you don't spend money, you cannot overcome it. Whereas with maybe a game like Genshin, the free-to-play experience, you have to be more patient, you have to be choosier, you can't, get as many units in total, but as long as you are smart and manage your resources and you don't just want every unit in the game, you can get the units that you want. Maybe you have to be a little more patient, but in the end, that feels good. Like, you feel like you've really earned that, compared to like maybe a whale who C6 R5s every unit. They already know that they're going to get that unit. They already know that they're going to C6 R5 that unit. It doesn't matter. And for a lot of whales, they won't talk about this, but a lot of whales, I mean, like, you honestly feel dead inside. Like, it's not like this big exciting thing that people think, where you feel like, because when you cheat the system, like, whaling is basically paying, as I was saying, whaling is basically spending exorbitant amount of monies to skip the obstacle of the system, to skip the challenge. And it kind of feels like cheating. It feels like going into a command prompt and spending money to turn on God mode. It's kind of what like whaling feels like in most situations. I think most people that have done it will agree that that's true. And so yeah, like I don't think that any whale, if they're being really honest with anyone, would say like that, that's worth it. But I think that if you talk to a lot of like free-to-play players who save, or maybe BP Welkin players who save, they will tell you that it is worth it. Like, they saved for months for this unit and they got it, and they'll tell you they remember exactly how the summoning session went, and they remember exactly how they felt and who said what and this kind of stuff, because it was an important moment to them where they had a lot riding on that moment. There was more risk, there's more reward for that reason. And then those kinds of things feed into a sense of like accomplishment that you've had in the world of Teyvat, that you had in your experience in Genshin, and you can like continue that experience over time to build up more and more and more. And so like basically the point of this video is that like I think we should, as gamers, discuss this stuff more openly and talk about it more actively. I think that rather than just being reactionary and saying, you know, reacting to all these monetization changes, all these changes to like RNG systems and things like that, we need to realize that game developers have already realized that if you make a game so optimized that players can just go from start to finish just by following through the motions, there has to be some kind of stopgap to make the game challenging. And I think it's turned into this sort of soulless system of like, they're just putting time barriers and they're just putting, you know, big blocks of like, well, now you're done playing for today, or now you've done all you can do, you know, like stuff like that. And it doesn't feel good for anybody. Rather, I think creating a system that feels rewarding to work through and engage in is the future of these games, and the future of gaming in a long-term situation like MMOs in general, at least so I think. And to be crystal clear, there are tons of ways to create these systems of adversity. You know, there are some people who prefer the kind of adversity that like Elden Ring brings or Dark Souls brings, where the games are just purely difficult in a skill basis, and your personal accomplishment comes from, you know, the challenge of actually doing the game, which, you know, that is totally fair and like an absolutely valid way to enjoy a game. But I think that there are also systems like, you know, how you have honing in Lost Ark, you have gacha in Genshin, you have like other kinds of systems of RNG that again create this system of adversity, but maybe in a less like skill-based way. Like it's more about strategizing and more about material, like your resource management, and less about something like, oh, I dodged at the right time. And there are aspects of that in Genshin, like with the Spiral Abyss and whatever. And that's its own thing where like, yes, that also feels fulfilling to work towards a goal where you clear some content that you previously couldn't before. This conversation could go on and on and on and on and on. I've been thinking about this for years because I personally stopped gaming for like 2 to 3 years when I went to college. I simply just felt more satisfaction doing normal real life things than playing video games. And so I stopped playing games for a good 2-3 years. And when I came back, I struggled to find fulfillment in video games. I struggled to finish many video games because they just weren't interesting. There were the occasional few video games that had really fantastic stories that captivated me or something like that. But it wasn't until a game like Genshin Impact came around that held my interest. And the reason Genshin held my interest was because of these systems that reminded me sort of like the adversity I had to work with in old school games, but a more modern, consciously created version. Like obviously the reason that games were hard and challenging in the past was because they weren't optimized, and we were just like dealing with that. And sometimes it's extremely frustrating. So I don't think that that is the way forward to like make games not optimized, but I think certainly the way forward is to create adversity mechanics in a game to make long-term enjoyers of that game, especially if it's like an MMO. I was talking specifically about like MMOs, but I think in games in general, like we could learn from this kind of experience. So anyway, I just went on and on for a long time, and those are my thoughts. I think that there is a lot to discuss, and I know I've seen many content creators cover this topic. I think it's something important to gaming and gamers as a whole, because we want to enjoy our game. But I am curious about what you think. So what you should do is tippity type into the comments and let me know, like, what kind of adversity do you enjoy in games? Like, let's just take it to this basic conversation. What kind of adversity do you enjoy in games? Like, what makes you feel that like intense satisfaction in gaming? Is it clearing really hard content like Elden Ring, or like raiding in Lost Ark? Is it overcoming some kind of long-term investment situation like resource management, like in like Genshin Impact with your Primo gems and your EXP and all that stuff? What gives you that? Maybe it's something else entirely. Maybe it's like people that design for their teapot. After you're done tippity typing your comment, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button and subscribing to my channel. I'm going to be posting videos every other day, and between those video days will be a live stream. So it's going to be like video, live stream, video, live stream, video, live stream, video, live stream, video, live stream until I die. or something else happens. But either way, if you want to be a part of that, if you want to be here in my friendly community, Discord link will also be in the comment section. And as always, stay healthy, stay hydrated. Peace out, everybody.